Okay. Hi, I'm Dahlia Lithwick. I cover the Supreme Court for Slate.com, and I think I've been doing it for 15 years. Wow, really? You're gonna hit me with that now? I mean, I just think sort of as a systemic matter, the court has to function as some kind of counter-majoritarian check. I don't think that's hugely controversial. I think that, where I'm struggling right now after this term, just as I think about the court, is the extent to which these identity questions, which I think pervaded the term, and in ways that I've never seen before. I mean, never seen, a Hispanic justice writing, "You have no idea what race is like and how it affects people today in America," and getting called out, by the way, by her colleagues for writing that. The way that Kagan wrote about religion in the Town of Greece case. You have no idea what it's like to sit and be evangelized by somebody who is of a different faith. The way, the Hobby Lobby dissent. So I guess I just think, and then the Wheaton College dissent. I think there is such a deep anxiety of the court right now about what we're supposed to be doing, who we're supposed to represent, whose experience counts, what this question of the differences between the justices and their stories, what it counts for, and whether it should be honored or whether it doesn't matter, whether it's appropriate to talk about your membership in a group. I have never seen a term explode over these issues, and in such, I think, personal ways, and with accusations, not just, oh, Thurgood Marshall is telling another story. Isn't he, interesting about what life in the Jim Crow South was? This is not that. This is like, I don't want to hear it from both sides. And so for me, that is the thing that I feel like, we hit some tipping point where the fact that we aren't 9 white men anymore really started to matter. And I'm not suggesting it hasn't popped up, many, many times before. And maybe there's something also slightly magical about having 3 women at the court where, things are said that might not have been said when there was 1 woman at the court. But for me, this term, if I had to say what I'm trying to understand about what a court is and what a court does, is this question of sort of the barriers between a justice's personal experience, their ideology, and what they think their job is at the court seems to have completely collapsed, or at least this question of, that was lurking under the Sotomayor hearing, this question of empathy and, is a justice's responsibility to, call balls and strikes, or is it to do something slightly different? I think that just really kind of caught fire this year. And I think that the tone of some of these opinions and these dissents where the justices are accusing each other of being blind, I mean, I wrote about that, how many times they use the word blind to describe each other, is something that it's going to set up, and I don't know how this plays out, but I think it should set up a conversation for the next confirmation hearing about something much more than empathy, but some language that we have not found yet about where a justice's life and experience and their own sense of how the world operates and how different it is from other people, where that kind of play in the joints is. I think that's, wow, I came out of the term just saying, like, someone should write an article about that. I mean, I think that the mere optics of 3 women saying to 6 men, 5 men, you have no idea what this case was about, and you missed it, is really something. I mean, had it gone no further than that, that would have been quite an extraordinary thing. But the fact that, that played out, in Hobby Lobby and in Wheaton, and that it's not 1 woman, it's 3. That's just powerful. And I think, there's a reason that it has had such saliency in the, it's been a long time since Hobby Lobby, and every day, the women's blogs and the women's you know, the women writers around the country are still on this, and I think it really, and that Ruth Bader Ginsburg at age 81 is a rock star. You know, I think that something happened for women in the court this year, and again, I think it's still too new for me to really understand what it is. But I think that it's a mistake to think that you can put that back in the box, because I think that all of these identity cases are being argued in ways that are argued and debated about publicly in ways that are quite different from what I used to see. And that I think watching the justices struggle with how this matters and how to convey that it matters, you know, having pledged balls and strikes, I think that's super interesting. So, and I think that when the Supreme Court was 9 men deciding Griswold or Roe, it was a very different court than when it's 6 men and 3 women deciding Hobby Lobby. So I do think that they're new questions, but also being presented in new ways. But I think, you know, understand most of what the court did for much of history was sort of economic questions and political questions. And, you know, I think that the idea that, you know, the court would have, like, you know, wrung its hands over IUDs would have been laughable, you know, 20 years ago. And so I think that this is just a new era of, you know, and I think that the anxiety that you're seeing playing out at the court over the way they talk to each other about these issues is identical to the anxiety you're seeing in Congress about the way we talk about it. And, you know, this is town hall meetings and how we talk about race and gender and sexual orientation. So I think this is our anxiety now. This is what we are worrying about and writing about and thinking about and Facebooking about and tweeting about. And so the court reflects that. I mean, that's kind of, you know, I think one of the things that was interesting at the end of the term was the folks who were like, look at all the unanimous decisions, right? Look at how collegial this court is. And then at the same time, you know, for me, look at where we broke apart and look how contentious and ugly and personal it was. So again, I think both of those things are true. I think you can say that both of those things are true, that it was a court that, and maybe in a deep way, it loops right back to the initial conversation we had about how, you know, the court was behaving like a court and deciding things narrowly and coming to, you know, this case only, we're not going to decide the big thing, we're going to go small, you know, very, very lawyerly, nuanced, careful decisions, except for when they were screaming at each other, you know, about things that make them very anxious, that cut to their core of who they are. And I think both those things were true. And I think it's okay that both those things are true.